Samuel B. Morse, who developed the Morse code, said, "To the kindly influence of Christianity, we owe that degree of civil freedom and political and social happiness which mankind now enjoys. In proportion as the genuine effects of Christianity are diminished in any nation, either through unbelief or the corruption of its doctrines, in the same proportion will the people of the nation recede from the blessings of genuine freedom and approximate the miseries of complete despotism." President Andrew Jackson, concerning the Bible, plainly said, "That book, sir, is the rock upon which our republic rests." In 1831, a Frenchman named Alex de Tocqueville came to America to research the American prison system. He came to learn why his own country, France, had so many prisons, while America had so few. In his now famous work, Democracy in America, he would later write, "There is no country in the whole world in which the Christian religion retains a greater influence over the souls of men than in America. The Americans combine the notions of Christianity and of liberty so intimately in their minds that it is impossible to make them conceive the one without the other. Upon my arrival in the United States, the religious aspect of the country was the first thing that struck my attention. In France, I had almost always seen the spirit of religion and the spirit of freedom pursuing courses diametrically opposed to each other. But in America, I found that they were intimately united and that they reigned in common over the same country." Yet with so many declarations about the Christian faith, history bears witness of what might be called the tares among the wheat. Plymouth Governor William Bradford wrote, "Marvelous it may be to see and consider how some kind of wickedness did grow and break forth here, in a land where the same was so much witnessed against." Bradford writes that in 1628, an early colony gave itself over to pagan practices, erecting a maypole, drinking and dancing about it, inviting the Indian women for their consorts, as if they had anew revived the beastly practices of the mad Bacchanalians. And of 1642, Bradford writes of the drunkenness and uncleanness, not only incontinency between persons unmarried, but some married persons also. Even sodomy and buggery, things fearful to name, he says, have broke forth in this land. Yet immoral behavior was not the only concern for the early colonies. In 1637, Massachusetts Governor John Winthrop conducted the trial against Anne Marbury Hutchinson, a woman called at that time the American Jezebel. Hutchinson held meetings in her home and developed a great following. She was accused of having troubled the peace of the Commonwealth and of the churches. Among her controversial teachings was that a man is united to Christ and justified without faith. At her trial, she claimed her teachings were given to her by immediate revelation. Often accused of antinomian or lawless doctrine, she said, "As I understand it, laws, commands, rules, and edicts are for those who have not the light which makes plain the pathway." Her former mentor, the Reverend John Cotton, referred to her meetings as a promiscuous and filthy coming together of men and women, saying that her opinions would eat out the very bowels of religion. As Hutchinson's trial neared its end, she said defiantly to her judges, "If you go on in this course you begin, you will bring a curse upon you and your posterity, and the mouth of the Lord hath spoken it." Nevertheless, Hutchinson was found guilty and expelled from the colony. Despite her threat, no record exists of any ill befalling Governor John Winthrop and those who expelled her. Yet Hutchinson's husband, William, would die 4 years later. And then the following year, in 1643, Anne Hutchinson herself and 5 of her children were savagely killed by warring Indians, an event regarded by some in Massachusetts as a manifestation of divine judgment. But after her death, Hutchinson retained a following among those who found admiration in her example of defiance. In 1850, 2 centuries later, Nathaniel Hawthorne refers to her as the sainted Anne Hutchinson in Chapter 1 of his famous work, The Scarlet Letter. Some believe that Hawthorne even based the character of Hester Prynne, the adulterous woman branded with the Scarlet Letter, on Anne Hutchinson herself. While early America recognized Hutchinson as the American Jezebel, she is today considered a courageous exponent of civil liberty and religious toleration. Some 3.5 centuries later, Harvard University's resident preacher and professor of Christian morals, Peter Gomes, proudly boasts of her that she was, quote, deft in theological and legal sparring, intellectually superior to her accusers, and a woman of conscience who yielded to no authority. Commenting on Harvard itself, Gomes actually admits the university was originally built to protect future generations from false teachings like those of Anne Hutchinson. Gomes calls her the inadvertent midwife to a college founded in part to protect posterity from her errors. Anne Marbury Hutchinson, he says, ironically, would be more at home at Harvard today than any of her critics. This twist in perception seems to symbolize the modern conflict concerning America's original intent of the word freedom. The early settlers believed it their duty to liberate themselves and mankind from the Dark Age of Europe. Can this be the difference between an America that once was and what she would become? A mysterious passage from Hawthorne's conclusion to his classic novel seems to embody the transformation. He writes that the Scarlet Letter ceased to be a stigma which attracted the world's scorn and bitterness, and became a type of something to be looked upon with awe, yet with reverence too. At some brighter period, when the world should have grown ripe for it, in heaven's own time, a new truth would be revealed.
I then asked, is this a human being that answers my questions so correctly? There was no rap. I asked, is it a spirit? If it is, make 2 raps. 2 sounds were given as soon as the request was made. I then said, if it was an injured spirit, make 2 raps. I asked, were you injured in this house? I ascertained by the same method that it was a man, aged 31 years, that he had been murdered in this house and his remains were buried in the cellar.
This account was given by Mrs. Margaret Fox of Hydesville, New York, concerning events that transpired on March 31st of 1848, and describes the beginning of what many consider to be the birth of modern Spiritism, the communication with spirits of the dead, or beings from the other side of reality. While Mrs. Fox recorded the account, her daughters, Kate and Margaretta, pictured here with their sister Leah, were considered the real mediums of this encounter. The sisters claimed to have contacted a disembodied spirit they called Mr. Splitfoot. The Fox sisters began a movement that exploded in the 19th century, surrounded with much controversy. The sisters became rich and famous for a time, even traveling with the likes of P.T. Barnum of Barnum and Bailey Circus as professional mediums. While skepticism and accusations of fraud surrounded them in their lifetime, 56 years later, on November 22, 1904, the Boston Journal would report that the skeleton of the man supposed to have caused the rappings, first heard by the Fox sisters in 1848, had been found in the walls of the house occupied by the sisters, and clears them from the only shadow of doubt held concerning their sincerity in the discovery of spirit communication. In the aftermath of the events in Hydesville, Margaretta Fox would experience further encounters. Using the alphabet to communicate, she obtained the following message from a spirit who told her, "Dear friends, you must proclaim this truth to the world. This is the dawning of a new era. You must not try to conceal it any longer. When you do your duty, God will protect you, and good